So that's the thing. I think it's probably, if I had to impress upon anybody, like the most important thing of this whole process, or like the thing not to be afraid of, it's like social media is the greatest like field testing resource in the history of humankind.
Hey, it's Packaging in a Box, the show that breaks down packaging, design, sustainability, how to build a brand with packaging. Today, we're talking to Mike Cesario, founder of Liquid Death. This company's growing, it's booming, it's insane. This episode, we're going to get into exactly how they launched their company based off of a photoshopped can of water. You know, he shares how important packaging is to actually build your brand. Don't think about your packaging after you've built it. Think about it at the beginning. Because if you're spending all of this money around marketing and advertising to promote the product that's in the packaging, you should spend all that money on the packaging first. So that the packaging is actually what people talk about, not the branding around it. Go follow Mike everywhere on Twitter, LinkedIn, wherever. These guys are blowing up. You're going to love it. Do me a favor, before we get started, if you're listening on Apple or Spotify or anything like that, leave a review. If you're watching this on YouTube, then go ahead and drop a comment, subscribe. Thanks.
All kinds of cardboard boxes.
What's in the box?
Oh, what's in the box?
It loses its value if you take it out of the packaging.
All right, today we got Mike Cesario of Liquid Death. He was launched not too long ago. You're already selling people sold to the devil in order to get Liquid Death. You got Joe Manganiello to sign, I think it was the first thing. And you have this like punk ethos behind the brand. Can you give me a little rundown on how you got here and what the brand is?
So, my background was, growing up playing in punk bands and metal bands and stuff like that, and designing t-shirts and silk screening. And like, that's how I got into like the creative design stuff. And then realized that graphic design was actually a real job.
Right.
And I was like, oh, cool. You can get paid to do this? Cool. So I went to school for design, ended up switching into advertising halfway through school because I was just way more into the conceptual side of stuff. Ended up, being a creative director for some ad agencies for a while. I think like got a really good sense of what big brands just always fuck up and just they can't get out of their own way, and kind of building my own, thesis on what I think a brand needs to be in like the year 2020. That's driven by social media, and nobody fucking watches TV anymore, and stuff doesn't need to be censored, and people are just tired of every kind of marketing possible, and all marketing inevitably just always sounds the same. And at the same time, I wanted to do something that was around health because I'd always been into being healthy. Like I haven't drank soda in years. Even when I was in high school, I was a vegetarian and my friends were vegetarian. Some didn't drink. And it was really only the unhealthy junk food brands that really invested into branding that appeals to like alternative youth culture kind of world. It's like Monster, Red Bull, Doritos, Snickers,
right.
Bud Light, it's all just crap. Whereas like all the healthy brands, they only market to like mom,
Right.
That's it. So I wanted to create Liquid Death as a way to sort of actually make a brand that is even cooler than all the junk food stuff, which at the end of the day, they're all billion-dollar corporations. Like they're not a couple of punk dudes, like Monster's owned by Coca-Cola. Their market cap now is $32 billion. Red Bull just did $7 billion in sales last year. Like, yeah, they're massive, massive corporations. So they're limited in the things that they can do or how quickly they can move or what they're willing to do. So I knew that making a small brand, we could do things that even they could never do or would never do. And then build it all around like the healthiest thing you can drink, which most people don't drink enough of, which is water. And that's really the whole idea with Liquid Death, and the packaging and everything is like, there's psychology involved in anything. Like, and I think that's the problem with big companies and MBAs and super business driven people. They think too rationally. It's like, why would someone buy your water over this water? Does your water have 0.5 more electrolytes than the one next to it? But that's not really why people make decisions on why you buy things or why you walk around with a thing or why you wear the t-shirt of a thing or why you want to tell 10 people about the thing. There's a lot more going on there. And I think that's what Liquid Death is. Yes, we sell water, just like Red Bull. Yes, they sell energy drink, but is Red Bull a drink company or are they an action sports entertainment company. They spent however many millions of dollars to get a guy to jump out of a plane in space. And like nobody's ever done that before, bajillion views. Like they're kind of blurring the lines between, yeah, we're an entertainment company, but the sales of the liquid help fuel the cool shit that we do. And it's like, or like you look at a band, is a band a music making company or a t-shirt making company? And that's how I think about Liquid Death as a brand is we are more like, I try to think about it more like we're a band than we're a water company.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, water's part of what we sell and people love it and we have everything we do there. But then we take t-shirts and merch really seriously. And we're also going to be creating cool, funny entertainment stuff that's like hopefully on the level of legit entertainment that you would see on Adult Swim or whatever. So that's kind of how it all comes together.
All right, Mike. So how do you go from having an idea of I want to build a water company to launching an actual water company, like creating packaging, driving brand through marketing? Like what's that first step? Like what's the most important thing? Anybody that's listening to this, a creative, a designer, an advertising person that wants to launch their own company or wants to push their client's company in a way that nobody else is doing. Like what's that step one? What's the most important thing for them to do?
So that's the thing. I think it's probably, if I had to impress upon anybody, like the most important thing of this whole process or like the thing not to be afraid of, it's like social media is the greatest like field testing resource in the history of humankind. It's like you can do and test anything for really cheap and get like a somewhat real reaction to it. It's like most brands, and I would try to get big companies when I was a creative director, trying to get them to think this way, and they just aren't built to think this way. They spend tons of money on focus groups and things that are not really an accurate barometer for what a reaction is to something. You put a bunch of random people who are each getting paid $50 in a room and you show them a video and tell us what you think about this. It's like, that's not really like, it's not the right scenario to get good data, right? But on social, you can put an ad in anyone's feed for as cheap as $5 to as much as, $500,000 if you want, depending on how many people you want to see it. And you can see, do people like it? Are they sharing it? What are the comments like on it? So what we did was I worked with, some designer friends to help design like the first version of the can. And it looks like a 3D can in Photoshop, like pretty real looking. Then we shot a $1,500 commercial that obviously like the concept, that's the one where the girl's pouring out the water and she's waterboarding the guy.
Right.
And it's like, yeah, when you have a really good idea, you could almost have shot that video with an iPhone and it would still be good. You don't need to spend a lot of money on production. Just make sure the idea is really good. So we launched on Facebook with those two things, a Photoshop composite of a can, minute-long funny video. We had no Twitter page, no Instagram page, just Facebook. And then we put a few $1,000s in paid media behind the video just to push it out to some people. And then we did like a couple funny social posts, like maybe once a week or something like that, twice a week. And then 4 months later, our page has more followers than Aquafina. The video's got like 3 million views. And we're getting all these direct messages from 7-Eleven franchisees who are like, hey, I own 3 7-Elevens in Michigan. How do I get this in my stores? Or, hi, we're the biggest non-alc distributor in New York City. Can we talk to a salesperson? So I then use all of that as the proof of concept. Because if you just tried to go raise money on, hey, I have this idea. I want to put water in a can and call it Liquid Death and put a skull on it. Like nobody's writing you a check. But now that you've got actual market data, essentially, it's showing, look how many followers we've gained. It's more than Aquafina. Look at all these comments that people are saying. We're getting messages from retailers. Like now all of a sudden people are willing to take a bet and say, okay, hey, we'll give you guys a little bit of money to actually make this a real thing. And then, then that is the hard part is now you have to start figuring out, okay, how do you actually put water in cans and where can you do it and what does it cost? And you just go, there's plenty of people who know this game. You just go find, like, you can go on LinkedIn and find any number of like beverage manufacturing people that are happy to like give you, consult with you and say, oh yeah, well, what you have to do is you got to use a heat pasteurization tunnel system for something like that. You can't use UV. So you got to look at these kind of places. I can give you the number of a guy who might do that over here. And you just kind of find people that know what they're talking about, and they help point you in the right direction. It's kind of how it's done.
All right. So then at this point, you've got your can design, you've got your minute-long ad, you're doing all the social stuff. Like, at what point do you decide, all right, I'm going to reach out to Will Crisola?
So that's funny. So we already had the Facebook page up. We had, a ton of views. Like, it was really just like, we had this thing that was building pretty quickly. And I was always a huge fan of Mr. Pickles. Like, it was like my favorite thing ever. And it was literally, I just cold DM'd him on Instagram saying, hey, huge fan of the show. And I have this kind of crazy water brand I'm starting. Just curious, maybe you want to be involved in some way. And he told me the story later that he was in a van with friends on their way to medieval times when he got that DM. And, he showed everybody like the image of the can that I DM'd to him. And they're like, oh, that's hilarious. Like, so then he got back, and then, we met up and we got along really well. And he was sort of like my creative kind of partner in a sense, where like, he is busy morning till night trying to create an animated TV show, as you can probably imagine. Like, it's an insane amount of work. So he had a limited amount of time. But as I made stuff, like, I'd bounce things off him, like, hey, do you have any ideas for something like this? And his brain just, when you're writing weird jokes 8 hours a day in a writer's room, like, they're really good. It's just like, getting to that weird stuff that like might take me a lot longer to get to. That was kind of how we started building, like, as the brand really started going from just a can and one video, building into like what it could be. And Will still does a lot of the Liquid Death art for us, but we're also now doing, working with other artists and starting to do limited edition, like, artist drops in the merch. We'll start having like limited art on the bottom of the cases that'll get more varied and stuff like that. Like, art, I think, is really a big part of the brand, whereas like most energy drinks, it's kind of a lot more action sports heavy. Like, we're not that focused there. We're more in the world of like Adult Swim weird art. And then now, like, skateboarding and stuff is now naturally coming to us rather than us chasing after it. Like Steve Barra is now involved in the brand, and we do a lot of stuff with the Barracks. But art will always be sort of like the pillar of the brand.
I know when I went to the refrigerated section at the gas station, when I reached in there, it's funny because it wasn't me. It wasn't this guy buying that can of water. It was like my 8th grade skater punk, tattoo covered, rebellious kid reaching in. It's almost like I had like a nostalgia for that angst, right? Yeah. At this point, it's less angst and like less in your face and just more, I got bills to pay. But reaching in and grabbing that was like a throwback to that feeling of, fuck you, I'm buying this water. And then the crazy part is when you crack it open and you drink it, your water's actually even better than any of that stuff. Having worked on a couple of different water brands in the past, basically what's filling those waters is just tap water with a few different minerals added here and there to change the flavor and be able to promote certain things, but it's basically tap water. And you guys are actually going across the ocean to import water. Tell me a little bit about that, the decision to bring in water versus just build a brand on tap water like everybody else does.
Yeah, so we source the water in the Alps in Austria. It's a roundabout way how we ended up in Austria, but it's actually really hard to find like a natural mountain source where at the source they have the ability to can it, unless you want to invest millions and millions and millions of dollars in building a canning line and facility at an existing spring source somewhere else. But these guys were one of the few. We met them. We really liked them. Obviously, the water is really good. So we thought it was just kind of, from a branding standpoint, there's just a fun thing about like Austria. It's like it's just like a random thing.
The fact that it's Liquid Death, you don't expect that the product inside is quality, right? A lot of people see that, they just think it's like a gimmick. So the fact that you're not going down this path of like just flavoring tap water and you're going super deep on quality, does that come from product design? Does that come from your background in advertising? Like, where does that start?
I think at the end of the day, if you want to build not sustainable, like in terms of sustainability, but a business that can continue on for a long time, it has to be a good product. It's like the marketing, I forget, one of my old creative directors told me, it's like, great advertising is the quickest way to kill a bad product. It's like that marketing is going to get everybody to go out and try it once. But if they don't like the experience of actually drinking it, then it's only going to be a novelty thing that just like you buy one time for the novelty and that's it. But if it doesn't even have to be the best product. As long as it's good, it's like, oh, this is good. You'll get people to keep coming back if they want to, like I like to say, invest in the brand. It's like, I think people care more than ever about where their dollars are going. Like you care about, oh, does Chick-fil-A, do they have, religious views that we don't want to support, so I don't go to Chick-fil-A? Or Nike, they made their big bet with Colin Kaepernick commercial. When everybody hated Colin Kaepernick, Nike looked at their audience and said, hey, a portion of the country is going to light their Nikes on fire because we're making a political statement. The rest of the country is going to say, I believe what Nike believes, and I want to give them my money and wear their brand as a badge of like almost my political, in a sense, viewpoint. So I think that's what we try to do with the brand and marketing. It's like everything anytime someone comes in contact with the brand, whether it's the can or an ad on social or a poster, it's like when you only have 3 seconds maybe of someone's attention, like that you can instantly convey, that's not Coke, that's not Pepsi. I think there's probably some dudes I'd want to hang out with and have a beer with behind this thing. So I'd rather give them my $1.69 than these like soulless, faceless companies, all around.
Yeah, 100%. So where does the idea for even developing a water company come from? There's a million products out there. You can pick anything out there. You can do merch, you can do shirts, you can do hats, you can do gummies, like all these different products that are launching every day. You don't see another water company necessarily popping up because it's not the easiest product to get into. Like I said, you guys are choosing to do this the hard way on hard mode, which is what I think is most inspiring for creatives and designers and marketers, that it's not an easy product to market and you guys are winning. Where did the idea for that come from?
So it was actually a moment. Some of my, a lot of my friends still, they play in bands, and they were playing on the Warped Tour in Denver. And I went to go, and this is probably 2008-ish, and went and hung out with them backstage. And like they have like this whole area of tour buses where all these bands are kind of just hanging out. And there was all these like cases of what looked like Monster, but it's not actually Monster. Monster puts water in Monster cans for Warped Tour because none of the bands actually drink that shit. So the bands on stage, they look like they're pounding Monster. It's just water. And I remember thinking like, man, that's so fucked up. Like all these kids in the audience think these bands are just guzzling energy drinks on stage in the hot sun. But it's really just like tap water, basically. And they would never sell it. It was just, and I think a couple of other energy drink companies would do the same thing for athletes because it's really counterintuitive. Like all these serious, like action sports athletes, motocross guys, snowboarders, pro skaters, like these guys are legit athletes. Like they have trainers, like they have fitness programs. Like it's not just like a couple punk kids hanging out. And like their trainers would never probably even let them drink that shit anyway. So it's like, I remember I kind of having this aha moment then of like, man, that's so screwed up. Like, why is it that energy drinks just like own this world now? Like none of us, clearly no one drinks it. That's why they're not giving any product to anyone. You're just taking the money. So then that was sort of this moment of like, and why doesn't water come in a can? Because like cans are cool. It's freezing cold. There's just like a fun thing with tall boys that, that you've had like ingrained in your brain since you were probably a kid. And that's just what started my process of like thinking about water in cans and what the brand would be. And, it was kind of, in the beginning, a very direct reaction to like the cheesy extreme marketing. It's like, you want to get to youth? Be extreme, guitar squeal, like Monster Claw, distress type. And Liquid Death was like, okay, well, how do we like out extreme the extreme bullshit? So it was like, all right, let's call it Liquid Death. But I think the important thing, it's like, it is a fine line to walk. Like it's not as simple as being edgy. Like, Liquid Death, if we had to then tie it to the product in some way, even if it's a dumb way, you still had to tie it to the product. So that's when we came up with Murder Your Thirst and Death to Plastic, because obviously we get the plastic bottles. And we're like, yeah, it's a true statement that really nothing's better than ice cold water at killing your thirst. Like drinking a sugary thing is not actually it's actually going to make you more thirsty. It's like, right. So it was like, there's a fun way to connect this ridiculous proposition to something as simple as water. And I think that's why it works. Like you couldn't just call it shark destruction. And it's like, it's just like there is I like to say with concepts, designers know that you have to craft design. You got to really get in there and you're crafting everything perfect so it works. I think you have to do the same thing with ideas and concepts. You got to really craft the concept so that it's perfect. Yeah.
How big is the creative team over at Liquid Death at the moment?
It's pretty small. But we I don't do anything in the traditional kind of way. Hire your team, or you must have this agency that you do all your stuff with. So it's I look at this kind of when every project is almost like when a director or a producer is making a movie. It's hey, we got to make this thing. Let's go find the most talented people that are right for this thing and bring them in and make it. And then it becomes a thing. And then those people might go away. Or some people that come back for lots of other things because they have multiple talents. So they can use them for a lot of things. But I just really try to look for the people who are best at doing whatever the thing is that we're trying to do.
I mean, it seems like that team meeting is going to be insane. The most fun you could possibly have in a design meeting, right? Where you guys are talking about death and skulls and water being the most powerfully killing machine, right? The same water that I bathe my baby in is the same water where all those people drown in the Titanic, or and it's killed millions of people. So it is this force of death. Do you ever get submissions from fans of hey, this is killer, or creating fan art for you that you guys end up using in your marketing that bleeds back into the design and advertising?
Yeah, sometimes. I think one thing that we're lucky about as a brand, one, our fans are really funny and creative. So the stuff there's no other beverage brand, I can't think of one, that when you search the hashtag, Liquid Death, the amount of user content that's, funny and interesting or dumb or whatever is more than any other brand. So we leverage that. It's no other brand has that luxury. So why wouldn't we really lean into that? So a lot of what we do on social is we're highlighting cool stuff that people are doing with our product, or dumb things they're doing with it. We make our audience a big part because we can.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just saw your skate
Murder
your house. Yeah, Murder Your House. Which is crazy. It's where people submit stuff via Instagram, and then you turn this house into a skate park. You guys announced a winner on that?
We did, yeah. It was, and you can watch the whole. They submitted one through their house line. Is these two brothers, Dalton and Kane. They're pro skaters, but they just completely have a whole line going through their entire house inside and out. It's pretty ridiculous. Yeah, they got their rep for 6 months.
All right, man. So if I look at the shop, if I look at the website and I go to the shop, you guys have a ton of merch. You have this koozie that looks like a paper bag to carry your water can that looks like a beer in. You guys also just released an album of hate songs. You guys just released an LP, which looks like the most metal, almost looks like an Ozzy Osbourne Ultimate Sin cover. Where the hell do you go from we're selling water to we're making a metal album? How does that happen? Where does that idea come from?
Yeah, obviously with the music background, music is another thing that the brand has been pretty big on, art and music. I grew up playing music. A lot of my friends are in bands. Some of our investors, Fat Mike from NoFX, he's an investor in the company. So music was always just all around us. And then we basically had this, we worked with one of our creative agencies, and they're always giving us ideas. And one of the ideas was what can we, backing up. One of the highest performing social content pieces we did was when we featured negative reviews that we got from people, or people commenting on a Facebook post being like, "Fire your marketing guy," or like, dumbest thing ever, and I think when we would highlight those and put it next to the can, it's like, people love us on the internet. Those posts did better than anything else we ever did. And it was funny because those posts literally I built that post in probably 30 minutes. It was like screen grab, little comment bubble, stick it next to can, put a little thing that says people love us on the internet, call it a day. It was just like, hey, I need to make a quick piece of social content. And of course, that cheap, fast thing ended up outperforming things that we spent way more money on, So we started thinking about what are more ways that we can kind of like have fun with like all the like haters, and social hater comments. And then, we had this idea of like, well, what if we turn them into like the actual hate comments into lyrics to like an angry metal album? And it's like, yeah, metal's angry. These people are angry. Like it kind of all fit together. And then, again, and we sort of casted the production of that project. So we hired a guy who is super legit metal musician, drummer, guitar player, plays in a band called Gruesome on Relapse Records. He's a good friend of a guy that works for us, who's a music guy. And yeah, he was like, yeah, I would totally write the whole album for you guys. And he could do it pretty quickly. And then he found the singer guy to come do the vocals. And then we just created the lyrics ourselves, like pulling the hate comments and just literally gave him all the songs, like song 1, song 2, song 3. And he just had his vocalist guy like sing all the lyrics to it. And it's like a super legit album. And then for the cover art, we hired this Italian guy who does a ton of metal record covers, like Mutoid Man and Zach Sabbath and like all these other kind of bands. We hired him to make the album cover. And that's how we made it.
Then you're getting all the social media shares from the album and people either hating it or loving it. So that continues just to kind of grow that marketing machine.
Totally. Yeah. It's always nice when marketing actually pays for itself or even makes you a profit.
Yeah, I think about it like that Lego movie, right? Where people won't sit and watch a 30-second Lego commercial, but they'll go and pay to sit down for a 2-hour Lego movie, which is basically a commercial.
100%. And that's like that's my whole thing for Liquid Death is like, is there really a reason that you have to make like marketing, like a traditional commercial, traditional whatever? Like you could spend, like for instance, to run a 30-second commercial during, I don't know, like the Grammys or something, right? I think it costs something like a little under $1 million or something, because the Super Bowl commercial is like almost $5 million. So I'm sure like a big TV event like the Grammys or the Oscars, like it's probably $1 million to run one 30-second commercial one time. And how much does that really move the needle for your business? How many people see a 30-second commercial and they're like, oh my God, I'm going to go buy this thing? If they even remember it, or if they didn't fast forward past it, they didn't turn the sound off when the commercials come. Or think about the film you could make for $1 million. So like Liquid Death, it's like we could make a full-length horror movie about killer cans of water that roll around and kill people and release it on Netflix or Hulu or something like that for the same amount of money that maybe you can get one 30-second commercial for. But yeah, to your point, you've got an actual piece of entertainment content that people might be willing to even pay for or seek out or spend 2 hours with your brand, and then, what you get from that is way more. So I think, it's just a matter of being smarter with your marketing dollars. Like it's less about, oh, we have this much money to make a commercial. It's more like, okay, we have $100,000. What is the smartest thing or coolest thing we can do with $100,000 that's going to make people care about the brand, talk about the brand, become a believer in the brand, whatever it might be. And I guarantee you, most of the time, if you think about it that way, you're never going to say, make a commercial, make a 30-second.
Right.
As we start wrapping up here, can Liquid Death get too big and lose its edge? Like, will this become a $1 billion company and then it's just kind of vanilla?
It's a good question. I don't think so. I think, like Monster, for example, they're a $32 billion global company, and they haven't really lost their edge from the beginning. It's not like in the very beginning, it was all, it was porn and, no, it's like it was always the same thing of like action sports, rock bands and stuff like that. And it's still like that now, because I think it depends on also what you mean by big. It's like, if you just look at how big the global audience is in terms of appeal for something like Liquid Death or like Monster, it's billions and billions of dollars when you look at it globally. Now, are we going to be as big as Coca-Cola? That's like a $300 billion company or whatever it might be. No, but we don't need to be like, nobody needs to be that big. Like, if you're making billions of dollars, like, you're probably good. So I think there's plenty of audience that and I'm just talking about like die hard audience on a global level for this to be a massive, brand. But what we're seeing that I think is probably the most surprising thing for me, and probably most people who would ever look at this thing early on, is that the appeal of Liquid Death is way broader than I ever thought it would be. Like, we're like one of the top selling waters in Whole Foods right now. We've only been in there a couple of weeks during a pandemic. And it's like, moms are buying it. Like, all kinds of like people who don't give a shit about metal are buying it because they just think it's cool and they want to support this thing because it's unique and different. At the end of the day, it's a sustainable can and it's healthy. Yeah, like we got like a direct message from this woman who's like, I'm a 37-year-old bougie suburban girl that loves Taylor Swift, but I freaking love your brand. It's like, and I think that's I think that's why, back to packaging, why packaging is so important is we intentionally baked all of the marketing power into the packaging. Normally it's like you create the package for something and it's, it's like, it looks good, but it's probably fits into a category. There's nothing like blow your mind. What the fuck? Like, rarely, right? So then you've got the package, and then they go and hire an advertising agency to then build this theater around this somewhat normal package to make you care about it. So it's like, you've got a somewhat normal thing. You now need to build all this marketing around it to make people care or talk about it. But we knew that as a small brand, we're not going to have anything close to the marketing budgets of the competitors. So we knew that the can itself had to be the shareable, holy shit, oh my God, you have to see this, take your phone out instantly thing in order for us to spread. Because if we had to just pay for all the eyeballs that we come across, then we just wouldn't be able to do it. So I think every decision we made from the packaging of the can is based on like, how will this, like, you have to pick this up if you see it on the shelf, or like you have to take your phone out and take a photo of it. That gives us a lot more, I guess, value in terms of like soccer mom picking it up, Instagram model picking it up, because even when they post about it, because it's so fucking Slayer and metal, it's like ironic that they're posting about it. So it's still funny, it's not like you've got this normal thing and you're so dependent on this outside thing that you build around it, where if the wrong people start supporting it, it loses that magic. It's like, no, the can itself is always going to be an eyesore almost, regardless of who's holding it. And it's almost funny when someone untraditional is holding it.
So then what you're saying is, like, with a commodity, it's really all about the packaging, right? We don't need necessarily another commercial of a teddy bear wiping its ass to sell toilet paper, right? It's the packaging. And if I'm launching a dental floss, it's the packaging. It's not the product anymore.
Right. Yeah. Because the thing with commodities, I guess, is, it's like the perception about them from one brand to the other is like, the differences are very minimal. And it's kind of, but it's like that for almost any brand, I think, like beer. Like, you can have people who are like, I only drink Coors Light. Fucking Budweiser tastes like piss, But I guarantee you blind taste test Coors Light, Bud Light, Corona Light, all these things. There's no way someone's picking out their favorite one. Guaranteed. Like, everything is also the same when you really strip away branding and packaging. Like, you just have clear cups full of the leading beers, or blind taste tests of whiskeys or anything else, it's like people who are super brand loyal, 9.8 times out of 10, it's because of the brand and not because of actual physical characteristics of the liquid or the product. And yeah, and especially when it comes to something where there's very little perceived difference like water or toilet paper, yeah, then it really does become, it's a full brand play. Especially now, it's one thing if it's like you're trying to be 10 times more expensive than everybody else. It's a little bit of a different game then. But like when everything is close to the same price, like why wouldn't you pick the cooler thing? You know?
Designers launch brands and support brands every day, day in, day out.
Yeah.
Is there a reason that we don't do this for ourselves? Is there something that's missing in design education that allows us the permission to go and build a company for ourselves instead of doing it for other people?
I think so. I think because there's two parts to building, because when you build your own brand, you're building your own business. And when you start thinking about building a business where you've got to have money and it's got to make profit and you've got to manage things, like sometimes I think designers, that just scares the shit out of them, where you're like, okay, I want to make the cool thing. I don't want to worry about HR and invoices and that kind of thing. But I think the misconception is you don't have to do all that stuff to start a business. Like you don't have to be a business person to create your own business. You just have to be smart enough to know you need to just go find someone that does the thing that you don't do. You know, so LinkedIn, an incredible resource. You can literally find any person who does any job anywhere and reach out to them directly. And the thing about designers is a good designer is a hard thing to come by and usually very expensive for someone who isn't a designer. So the value that you bring, being able to create the awesome packaging and the design and everything, is worth a lot. So when you have somebody who you can find that's like good at the business operation side of something, they're going to get really excited to work with a good designer because they know that like, shit, if I had to actually go to a super legit design firm to get that level of quality, like I might be spending a couple $100,000. Right. So I think just finding the right people so that you've got both sides of creative brand and then also operational business thing, just having those two things together, like you can get pretty far. And then you start adding more people as you come along and learn like what you need. But I think that's the biggest thing is like, yeah, don't think that you need to do it all yourself. In fact, you probably need to just go and find all the people who do the things that you don't do and then just focus on what you are best at. Yeah.
Yeah, I just saw that Johnny Walker launched a paper bottle.
Yeah, I saw that this morning too.
Aluminum is metal, but it's metal and it's recyclable. We're seeing brands trying to package liquids in all these new materials. Like, what are your thoughts on, these paper bottles?
So the paper stuff is a little bit of a bullshitty kind of thing because the thing that people have to realize, and there's a couple things going on, but like recycling is not like anybody thinks that it actually is or how it works. Aluminum is recycled and metal in general is recycled more than anything else because economically it makes sense. Like metal is as a material is worth a lot more money than paper. Like a pound of aluminum, you're going to sell for a lot more than a pound of paper, right?
Yeah, I just had an interview with Bo Peck over in Utah, who's a recycler, and he explained, petroleum's super cheap at the moment, and he's got 40,000 pounds of premium grade plastic that can be recycled, but he can't sell it. So it can sit there for a little bit of time, and then he's got to move it, and the only place he can move it to is landfill. Yeah.
Landfill, right, exactly. Yeah. So when you throw your can into a recycling bin, it goes to a recycling facility. They melt it down fairly easily and they make it into these big metal bricks. And then they can resell those metal bricks at a profit, which are then used to make new cans with. And you can just keep doing that over and over again. Paper, for example, when you send it to a recycling facility, if the paper, like for instance, a pizza box, if your pizza box has grease all over it, they can't recycle it. It's trash. It's got to go to the landfill. So there's an amount of quality that comes into like the paper that comes in and then grinding it up. And then like, what does it actually cost them to go through the process of grinding up paper and getting it into a form that you could maybe resell? And a lot of the times They can't even resell that ground up paper at a profit for what it cost them to go through the whole process to process it. So same thing with plastic. Plastic is not at all recyclable or not at all profitable to recycle. So when you throw your plastic away in the recycling bin, it goes to a recycling facility. They would go out of business trying to spend money recycling plastic. Then you grind it up and you have ground up plastic that you literally can't sell to anybody. It's worth nothing. So they're like, okay, well, we're not going to go through that process. We're just going to send it right to the landfill. So, and stuff like, like box water and like those Tetra Pak kind of things. Those things are like, well, most paper, it's paper, but then they also have like a layer of plastic on the inside because the liquid would just like soak into the paper, right? So it's like to recycle that properly, that needs to be separated in a special way. And there's only a couple of recycling facilities that do it. And the ones that do it, it's expensive. So it's not profitable to that because then you've got the cheap ground up paper you can't sell it to anybody after. So a lot of what's happening with like the Tetra Paks, like box water and stuff like that, recycling facilities are just putting them on trucks and they're getting shipped to Mexico by truck, which is not environmentally friendly. And then they're getting ground up and downcycled into cement mix. So it's not like that shit ever becomes new Tetra Paks. It's just like, it's just turning into cement, basically. So that's why metal really is from a recycling standpoint. Now, of course, there's all these things that go into like, you have to mine metal and that's not great for the environment. But the fact that it really is one of the only things that's actually profitable to recycle and infinitely recyclable. You can take a can, melt it down, becomes a new can over and over again. Once you've got all this metal, like, you can continue to reuse it. And, like the soda industry has been in decline for like 12 years. So all those cans being used to fill soda can be recycled and made into metal that maybe fills Liquid Death or fills other products with. So there's a lot of metal already in the world that can just be repurposed and used around. So you don't have to keep getting more of it.
And with aluminum, you can hold on to that as long as you want because basically people are drinking cans every day. There's a demand for it because it's profitable. I mean, that waste stream keeps moving. Liquid Death, Mike, thank you so much for being on here, man. Huge fan of Liquid Death. Hope you guys continue to grow. Can't wait to see what you guys do. As always, man, I'll keep watching.
Yeah, appreciate the time, man.
Yeah, man.